welcome back. As we progress with some of our videos, I'm starting to get some special requests from people, and I am trying to keep track of what you've asked for me to do. I just simply don't have time to do it all right away, so I have to kind of pick and choose and do what seems to fit best with what I'm actually doing in the shop at the present time. I've had some requests for various styles of tongs, some more information on how to punch eyes for an axe and forge an axe out of a single piece. And then there's been several requests for punching under the hydraulic press and generally just more information about the hydraulic press. I would like to say I am an expert on the hydraulic press, but I am not. This is still a relatively new piece of equipment that I'm getting to know. I'm still trying to figure out the best way to design tooling. I will share whatever I know and what I learn and let you come along on the journey of learning how to use the hydraulic press. But that's a bit of a disclaimer that there may be better ways out there, and what I'm doing today probably won't be the way I'm doing it next year. I'm still learning myself. You always learn in the craft of blacksmithing. So we just punched an eye and an adze blank, and you can kind of see what the press is capable of. I have gone through a few versions of punch or punch plates, the bolster plate and the stripper, trying to find something that works better, and I'm still not completely happy with what I've got, but people have asked how I do it and what my tool looks like, so I'm going to explain it and explain what I like and what I don't like. This is the first one I made. I spent a lot of time working on this little jig. It's got little adjustable bolts so you can line up the axe head exactly perfect, or whatever you're punching. It doesn't have to be an axe. But this thing was going to take all of the guesswork out of it. And stripper plate that you could swing in at the last moment so you could see what you were doing. It seemed like a great idea at the time. The reality is it doesn't work anywhere near as well as I had hoped. A tiny misalignment in the way you've got the bolts adjusted means that you can't punch the eye centered. Even though your eye might see it, you can't adjust this quickly and easily to fix the problem. And if anything is tipped a little bit, it seems to make that even worse under this. At some point, something happened that the adjustment bolts on this side are completely locked up now. They're bent. I'm not sure how the piece of hot steel leaned over and bent those, but the press has enough power to do that. So the thing really just, it's too fancy, it's too gimmicky, it doesn't suit the way I work. I'm better off trying to line things up by eye or marks on the piece than I am designing tooling that does the work for me. I don't think like a machinist, and I am not the cleverest tool maker out there, so making tooling for this equipment is way better off done simply. So this is what I'm using now. Very simple. It's just a punch plate with a bolster hole and two welded up strippers, and it works just fine. The punch is very simple. It's welded to a plate and goes right down in there. What I don't like about this is, one, the bolster hole, the material tends to push down into that, and it leaves an ugly scar that telegraphs through on the back side. Even after the hole is punched, you can still see where this was. So it's something that has to be ground out later. I've actually started, and if you noticed in the intro, I had a little piece of plate under there so that I was not punching down into this, and it works way better. You can still shear the slug out in the middle. You might have to take it to the anvil to knock it the rest of the way out, but it's loose, so it's easy to do. The other thing, this punch is an H13 punch. Let me zoom in here. And should be about as tough a material as you can get, but it still deforms between the heat and the pressure because it's in contact with the hot material for so long. I suspect the Brian Brazil style punch that's a little bit sharpened might go through faster and therefore might hold up longer. I'm also going to try making some out of S7, which gets harder in the first place than H13, but isn't as heat resistant, so there's going to be a trade-off there. Like I said, I have ideas for another punch setup that will have interchangeable punches instead of having to weld the punch to the plate. This makes it hard to make a new punch of a specific size or to replace a punch that's just worn out quickly and easily if you have to weld things up. Plus, these are harder to store than just punches. So I'm going to make something that has a socket that holds the punch and see how that works. And I'll show that when we get around to making it. The other thing that I have done previously is drill guide holes. This isn't so much to make the punching easier. The press doesn't care. It's going to punch through this 1.5-inch piece of steel just fine regardless. But it does help line up by eye. This was very important when I was using solid tool steels for my axes and adzes because it's about $5 per tool to buy the tool steel. Now that I'm using more mild steel and doing welded in bits more often, I can afford to do these by eye because if I screw one up, I've only lost 50 cents worth of steel, so it's not that big a deal. Plus, the more of them I do by eye, the better I'm going to get. And the only way to improve skills is to do it. So while this works, and it really is more reliable without the guide system, I'm trying to get away from it and just improve my skills. So let's go over to the press and see how all this works. So here's my hydraulic press. I did a video earlier, well, probably last year now, and I'll link to that at the top of the screen. It's based on a press in Jim Batson's book on building hydraulic presses. He builds his with the ram on the bottom. I decided to turn this over, but that's all explained in that earlier video. Power plant's all, and then the hydraulic tank is all on the bottom. It's a 24-ton press. It runs pretty darn slowly, but I'm okay with that because that gives me time to respond to things, and so far it hasn't disappointed me in any of my expectations for it. I have these quick change die plates that allow my dies to slide in without having to bolt things in or use any other kind of clamping system. And it works pretty well. My dies just slide in. I've got these keepers, which are another thing I would change on the press. The idea is good, but these are made out of 1/4 inch, and I managed to bend them with things that want to push the dies out. So I think I would change that to a 3/8 or maybe even a 1/2 inch piece. So something a lot more solid. But they work. The dies have never fallen out. They've just pushed against it enough to bend them, so now they're a little bit loose and floppy. Not as reliable as I would like. So the dies just ride in those holders. You can see the bottom, the punch comes very close to the plate. At one point it went through the hole if I needed it to, but it's been resharpened and cleaned up so many times it no longer does that. I've probably punched several hundred axes and adzes with this. So it's been a very functional setup. It's just not as ideal as I would like. So I'm going to be working in the gas forge for these because I can heat several at the same time and I don't have to worry about burning them up. This is where I believe the gas forge really pays off as the efficiency for production work. So we're going to let some blanks get hot, and then we'll go back over to the press and show you what's up. I'm going to put a little piece of plate in here that keeps me from pushing the stock down into the hole. I think that makes for a much cleaner punch. At least with my setup it does. And we're going to start with the one that's got 2 holes in it. I don't know if you can see that or not. Most of the way through from one side, and then I'm going to raise the punch all the way out, cool it with a little oil. That's just olive oil, by the way. A little bit of punch lube on there. Now from this side I can see both the pressure point from the punch and the 2 holes. By going slow, I can get things lined up, and there's still plenty of heat. Now, I have seen people, they just punch all the way through from one side and have excellent results doing that. Okay, so that punch did not come all the way through, but it is completely shear. So it's a simple matter at this point to just take your drift and knock that out. And I'm very happy with the way that works. Like I say, some people go all the way through one punch. They have very precise punch and bolster combinations that line up perfectly. My quick change die system does prevent some of that perfect lineup because things are a little bit loose in there. And it's one of the things I need to explore is how to improve some of that. Now between pieces I'm going to cool the punch off again with the olive oil. Put a little more punch lube on it. And that just helps that last longer. There's no reason to overheat it. This piece of material has not been marked, has not had any holes drilled in it. I'm just going to punch it entirely by eye. A little bit of a freedom there. Things end up a little bit different sometimes, but as long as you get it centered, same thing. Like I say, this is a fairly slow press. I'm going to punch most of the way through from one side. Add some lube to the punch. Line it back up, and right there, you can tell that's already sheared the punch when that speeds back up again. That time it actually took the slug all the way out. Very neat, clean hole. Biscuit is just sitting right there on this piece of plate. Now the plate does deform a little bit. It would be better off if it was about a ½ inch thick. By the way, this little light really makes a difference being able to see down in there. I'll probably get another one to put on the other side. They're just little cheap LED clip-on lights. That gives you an idea of how my current punch system works. It's highly functional, just not as refined as I would like it to be, and it does rely on skill and eye more so than it does a built-in guarantee that it's going to punch perfect every time. And that's both good and bad. I think I would be a little more productive if I didn't have to stop and stare at it and tweak and adjust. But I'm learning more doing it, and I'm developing my skill doing it, and things get faster as I do that. nevertheless, punching, most of what I'm doing is axes and axes and adzes, and I can do a dozen in an hour, not the whole tool, just punch the eye, probably a dozen in an hour. After that, it's back to the same old techniques that I've always used. So the hydraulic press is a huge game changer as far as that goes, and even with the limitations of this current system, it is still a vast improvement over punching them all by hand, and I think I do much better than punching them under the power hammer, which is another option. When I build a new punch system, this is one that I did for the fly press, and it worked pretty well into the fly press for smaller eyes, and it is just a 1-inch round that goes in the socket of the fly press. So I'm thinking that I will use this as the inspiration for another go at the punches. This would be quick, easy change out. I've got a piece of 3/8 wall, 1-inch ID tubing that will fit into to make a socket out of. If you're a machinist, you can certainly machine such a thing. And I'll cut a short length. It doesn't need to be any longer than that, so about 2 inches. And that will then get welded to my mounting plate for the press to go into the quick change dies. So this will just be, you only need one of these, and I can then quite easily make new punches. The only downside to this is it relies on a set screw in the side to hold it in place, and if I get it stuck in the hole, there's a chance I could pull this out of the holder, so I'm going to have to make sure that I really tighten that well. But I think I've seen other people using a system like this with good success, and if I need to, I can put 2 set screws in there and get twice as much either side by side or one up and one down. I'll have to see. And then I have this nice piece of S7 rod that's 1-inch diameter is what I'll make my punches out of. And I'll go through all of that in a separate video. I don't have the time right now to do it. I need to go punch a dozen or so adze eyes and get back to work on those. So thanks for coming by and watching the video. I hope this answers some questions. I hope it inspires you to look further than where I've gone so far and maybe share what you've made, because I'd love to see systems that work better. You're always learning in the craft of blacksmithing, and it pays to pay attention to what other people are doing and have an open mind that maybe their system might work a little bit better than the one you're using. So if you've got something you're using and you want to share it, put a link in the comments and I'll be thrilled to go look at it. In the meantime, I'd love for you to give a thumbs up to the video, subscribe to the channel by hitting that subscribe button down below, watch a few of the other videos, get out to the shop, get some iron hot, and get something done. Stay safe.